And here's Hilton Tarrant with the business news.
Well, ABSA's Robert Emsley quits as head of corporate and business banking. Uranium won to cut exploration and spending as its loss widens. Nampak says profit may fall by 55%, that's less than earlier forecast, and vehicle sales to drop as much as 7% next year. The oil share closed up 1 2/3% at 19,413. Gold currently 4% higher at $743 a fine ounce. Barrel of Brent at 52. The rand is at 10.02 to the dollar, 14.77 to the pound, and the euro at 12.69.
Thanks, Hilton. And Wayne McCurrie is with us in the studio from Rand Merchant Bank Asset Management. Wayne, an interesting week on the markets, not a very happy one. But
No. Look, the market's down at 19,400, even though it's up on the day, as Hilton said, about 1 3/4%. The market, it's fallen below 20,000 this week, so it's certainly not good news. And I suppose we're lucky it closed when it did, because the Dow's down heavily at the moment. It's down 3.5% at the moment, on the back of, in essence, bad news. I mean, don't expect any good news.
A lot of bad news, but particularly the retail sales numbers.
Correct. The retail sales numbers were the worst on record. Now remember, this is now reporting for October, and hopefully October was not a normal month. I mean, that is when credit markets and the interbank market totally and utterly died on us. In other words, in theory, and it's a bit of an overstatement, but capitalism ceased to function in October.
Froze for a while.
It froze for the month. So don't take that as being a portent for the rest of the time. We sincerely hope so, that it'll be a little bit better going forward.
But we're unlikely to see a particularly buoyant Christmas period, for example,
Very
for
unlikely.
anybody.
For anyone, yeah. South Africa, we are only on a comparative basis quite well off here. I mean, we do not understand the crisis overseas here. We've seen the rand fall and shares fall, but our economy is still functioning. I mean, we don't actually know how bad it really is out in the UK and in the US and in Europe. But I doubt very much whether retail sales will grow in real terms. Might keep pace with inflation, but there's no real growth, and it could quite easily be below inflationary growth in retail numbers. No one's going to spend money this Christmas in any big way. You can look at motor car sales. The retailers realized this a long time ago, so they're not going to be overstocked. I don't think they're going to be caught with that, because they have stopped, they have scaled back their purchase plans for the December period.
I suppose, but that's also a multiplier effect as well.
Yes, all the way through the system. I mean, don't expect any good news anywhere in the whole world for probably 3 months, 6 months before we start seeing any good news. And the economies will only really start growing again globally in about 2 years' time. Hopefully, South African economy grows in about a year's time from here, maybe 18 months. But there's no good news out there, unfortunately, and that's why shares have fallen down to the levels that they are.
Although talking about that and the potential difference between South Africa and most of the rest of the world, the South African National Roads Agency managing to raise $1 billion rand.
Yes. No, they'll easily raise it. I mean, our credit markets are working properly. In fact, we're in a bull market in bonds at the moment. And the road agency, their revenues. They get it from toll fees. You know it. So you know that it's fairly stable. It's not massively cyclical. They'll easily raise it.
Would they have been able to do it offshore, though? I mean, if it was the US Roads Agency, for example?
It's quite possible it would have, because there's been a huge bull market in bonds in America, as long as people perceive that you a good credit rating. And if you have such stable income and your company's highly unlikely to go bankrupt, I mean, your revenues don't fall by 40%. They might fall by 2 or 3%, but they don't fall by 40%. So probably would have been able to, yes.
What did you make of Astral's results? Largely in line with expectation?
I think they were in line with expectations. I mean, they did okay on the animal feedstuff section. In fact, I think they did quite well in the animal feedstuff. They were, if you excuse the pun, they were slaughtered in the poultry section. I mean, input costs just absolutely killed them. And they've had to, I think there was some about a 20 million rand expense to the income statement for some options that they bought that probably went against them. But considering the circumstances, not a bad set of results. And going forward, input costs are dropping. Costs are dropping. Fuel is halved. Food is coming down rapidly. So they should repair their margins. I mean, I think the margin halved in the chicken business from about 12% to 6%. I mean, the margin came under pressure in the animal feedstock section, but not nearly to the same extent. So it's actually looking quite good on that side. When you take Comair, Now, Comair's revenue growth in their last set of results was actually quite good. Even if their revenue growth comes under a bit of pressure, the drop in the fuel price just goes absolutely straight to the bottom line. You hope they haven't hedged. You hope they haven't hedged at 140 because our year stories at SAA is hedged at 140. And so they're paying. In fact, I think the price of Brent, I heard earlier on, the price of Brent's down at about $52, and it's probably going to fall through 50. So their costs are dropping. So they were, I think, justifiably right in the optimistic outlook.
Just to close off with the G20 summit starting today, what
Yes.
are we likely to expect from that? Are we going to see coordinated fiscal influences or fiscal policies, or what exactly are they even thinking about?
The problem's not really on the fiscal side. The problem's on the monetary side. In other words, the liquidity in the market it disappeared in October. It has got better now, and the people, the authorities, and the central banks are pushing a lot of money into the money system. But we are going to see some fiscal. I mean, we're going to see.
Government's
In
spending
essence,
money.
government's going to spend money, and we're lucky in a certain respect. Look, there's always a price to pay. Nothing's for free. There's always a price to pay. But we're lucky in a certain respect that there is no inflation. In fact, the world is in deflation. You've just got to report it. You've got to wait 6 months or 12 months for the numbers to actually show it. But we are already in a deflationary environment.
What does that mean for South Africa?
We're not going to go into it. Lucky enough. We won't go into that. But our inflation rate will fall dramatically next year, and we should see interest rate cuts coming through. We are going to come through this whole global turmoil as one of the better places in the world. Only 2 areas of our economy are going to be severely affected by this. You're going to get the resource side, the mining side. I mean, the price of platinum's halved. You can see Anorak comes out today saying basically we pulling back on the projects, and uranium one. But it's not just those two, it's every single mine in the country is not going to spend any capex, or is going to scale back the capex. So that will be severely affected. And of course, if the rand collapses, anyone who relies heavily on imports for their business is going to be severely affected. But the good old-fashioned South African consumer is actually in a way better condition than overseas.